Every MacBook Pro owner has that black bar at the top of their screen, the notch Apple introduced and nobody asked for. Most developers either ignore it or hate it. One dev decided to do something different. He turned it into a live Claude Code dashboard. And it actually works. Notch Pilot is an open-source macOS app that takes the dead strip of screen real estate and fills it with real-time data from Claude Code, Anthropic's AI coding agent. While Claude is working through your codebase, the notch shows you exactly what it's doing, which file it's editing, how many tokens it's consumed, what task it's currently running, and whether it's still thinking or waiting for your input. The clever part is the placement. The notch sits above the menu bar. It's always visible, no matter what window you're in. You don't need a terminal open, you don't need to switch tabs. You glance up, you know the status. It's like a heads-up display for your AI pair programmer. Here's how it works technically. Notch Pilot reads Claude Code's output stream in real time and parses it into structured status data. That data gets rendered into a compact overlay that lives in the Notch space using macOS native APIs. The whole thing runs as a lightweight background process under 20 megabytes of RAM according to the developer. It doesn't intercept your keystrokes, doesn't modify Claude Code's behavior, it just listens and displays. The demo on the GitHub page shows it in action during a real refactoring session. Claude is rewriting a module, and the notch ticks through the steps: reading file, analyzing structure, writing output, waiting for confirmation. It sounds simple, but when you're deep in another window and you want to know if Claude finished, that tiny strip saves you from context switching. But here's the thing, this tool has real limits, and they matter. First, it only works with Claude Code. Not GitHub Copilot, not Cursor, not Aider, not any other AI coding tool. Claude Code specifically. If that's not your primary tool, Notch Pilot does nothing for you. Second, it's macOS only and specifically targets the notch form factor. That means it's designed for MacBook Pro models with the notch, the M1 Pro generation and later. If you're on an older MacBook or any other machine, there's no notch to fill, and the tool has no fallback UI. Third, the information density is limited by the physical space. The notch is about 300 pixels wide and maybe 30 pixels tall. You get status text, a counter, maybe a progress indicator. You're not getting a full agent transcript or file diff in there. It's a status glance, not a monitoring console. Fourth, this is early stage open source. There's no packaged installer on the GitHub page as of now, you're building from source. That's fine for developers, but it's a real barrier if you want to hand this to a less technical teammate. What surprised me was how obvious this idea feels in retrospect. The notch exists. It's always there. It's screen real estate that macOS mostly wastes on a camera indicator. Filling it with contextual live data from whatever process matters most right now, that's just good UI thinking. So what could this realistically become? A few directions stand out. The most obvious is multi-agent support. If you're running Claude Code on one task and another tool on another terminal, a switchable notch view could show you which agent is active and what it's doing. Think of it like a process monitor but for AI sessions. Another realistic path is customizable data sources. Right now it reads Claude Code output. But the same architecture, parse a stream, render to notch, could work for any long-running process, a test suite, a build pipeline, a database migration. The notch becomes a universal background process indicator. If the developer adds a settings layer and packages it as a signed macOS app, this could realistically land on GitHub as a polished utility with a few hundred daily users. It's not a product business, but it could become a well-known dev tool in the Claude Code community, especially as AI coding agents go mainstream. So why does this exist? Because AI coding agents introduce a new problem that existing tools don't solve well. You're waiting on a process that takes longer than a compiler but shorter than a deployment. Seconds to minutes. Long enough that you switch contexts. Short enough that you want to know the second it's done. Switching to a terminal to check Claude Code's output breaks your flow. Notifications are too disruptive. What you want is peripheral awareness, the same way a status bar in an IDE tells you the build is running without demanding your attention. The notch, as it turns out, is perfect for that. It's in your peripheral vision, it's always on top, and until now, it was doing almost nothing. This is a small tool solving a very specific problem. It won't change how AI coding works. But it's a genuinely smart use of hardware that already exists, solving a friction point that every Claude Code user hits every single day. If you're building with AI agents, not just using them but actually building the tooling around them, we're covering more projects like this next week. Subscribe and you won't miss it.